Good morning, everybody, and we are live. 1 second. We are pixelated. Let's change that. Folks, I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all supporting the show when things like this happen. When they There, that should be a little bit better. Thank you very much. Glad you're here. Um, I appreciate you. Let's dig right into it. There's a lot going on. Let's get into it. Good morning, folks. I hope your day's going as well as mine. Can you believe we made it to Wednesday already? It's hump day. Oh man, I tell you what. I got some crazy good news for you and some crazy bad news for you to start with. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. Stick with me. This is kind of cool as hell. This is kind of cool as hell. I want to share this with you. You're going to like this. You are going to like this. This is the Thermo Fisher Cryos G3. Now, don't stick with me. Stick with me. This thing's cool as hell. It is. It is really cool as hell. You remember the old days back in the Marcus Welby days? Is dating myself a little bit. When electron microscopes came out, that was really cool, man. When you could really see those tiny little images that we could never see before. Well, that technology's just been going and going and going. And about the latest and the greatest is the Cryos G3 cryo electron microscope. I mean, it is badass, man. It is badass. See, it used to be they'd have to the way they'd have to prep these. You couldn't put anything alive in them, and two, just the sheer force of the electrons being blasted through them to get the images. They would distort the images, so they were limited on what they could do. Man, that has changed. That has changed. It's next level, and man, they are doing crazy amazing research with these microscopes. They're looking at cancer cells, just cells in general. They think that they're on the cusp of a breakthrough in aging. See, there's nothing about you that says you've got to get old and die. It's a biological process, but you're not really designed to do it. And they think they figured out how to kind of solve that problem a little bit where, hey, we might live to be 150, 250 years old, not age as quickly, heal better. More importantly, cancer research. They have been able to take this microscope, this cryo-electron microscope, and Harvard has two of them. And they have been just looking at cancer cells in completely new ways. Their cryo research center has been partnering up with their chemistry department, and they're doing things in cancer research in both the genetic front and the treatment front that are just brand new, completely brand new. But to do this, I mean, and it's really freaking cool, man. Like I said, Harvard has two of these things. But this is the latest and the greatest. It's the Thermo Fisher Cryos G3. But when you get one of those, you also got to get one of these. You got to get one of these. Lovely young lady named Kseniia Petrova in better days. Yeah, you need people that know what to do with them, because I mean, you remember back in the day when when you think about somebody looking at images, or you've got this amazing microscope that's producing these incredible images. Never before, like I said, the huge difference in these microscopes, the cryo microscopes, is the way that the samples are processed and handled. It's a whole new world. It's just a whole new world in the capability of what they can look at in a more natural state, in a more just. I just can't stress to you how excited I was. I was just reading and reading and reading and reading and learning about this. And man, it is cool as hell. But you don't get a guy. There's no doctor that takes, sitting there looking at these images like old Marcus Welby holding up his and if you young folks, you probably don't even know who the hell Marcus Welby is. Yeah, I'm really dating myself here. Holding up the X-ray, looking at it, and aha, or yeah, maybe something a little bit more modern. Remember House? Remember this the show House? They'd be looking at a scan and what's this? Oh, look at this. We see. Oh, yeah. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. Not anymore. Not for a very long time. Not for a very, very long time. Doctors don't sit there and have this aha moment. Oh, I see it moment. It doesn't work that way. See, these scans are so detailed and so fine. Why would you risk it on a person, sitting there chugging coffee, looking at these things? Well, this is what I'm looking for, I guess. No, it's done by computer. By the way, I got the coffee and I got the cup. This is one of my new favorite cups. Folks know I collect cups. I do. This is one of my new favorite cups. Thank you for sending this. I'm really grateful. It's from Kicking Horse Coffee. I am super grateful. That was really generous. I love the coffee. Bold. It is bold. And I love that cup. This is one of my new favorite cups. Wake up and kick ass. Um, but yeah, it's not that way anymore. You don't have some doctor sitting there staring at a screen and, oh, look at that nodule. Oh, that's shaped funny. Oh, no. It's a computer program. They figured out, okay, we've got this new set of images that nobody's never been able to develop anymore. And we know what we're looking for. So we're going to teach a computer to look for it, because you can run that image through a computer. It doesn't matter if it's 2:00 in the morning and they haven't had their coffee and they're tired and their eyes are tired. That doesn't happen. That computer will scan and scan and scan and scan and scan and scan and scan that image, and then it'll kick it out to somebody and say, hey, that's important. Look at this. That's the way it works. Well, Kseniia Petrova, pardon me, Kseniia Petrova writes the programs. She is part of Harvard's research team. She tells the computers what to look for. She writes the language in which these computers function. Kind of important, right? And is she up in Cambridge doing her job, saving us from cancer? No, she's not. She's in Jena, Louisiana, at the LaSalle Corrections Facility. out in the middle of nowhere, sweating her ass off. Yeah. I mean, is she up there? Like I said, is she up in Cambridge, up there in Harvard, changing the world? No, she's here. She's here. This is Jenna, Louisiana. Go to the map. This is Jenna, Louisiana. And by the way, ma'am, that massive ass cursor that's really hard to use is for you. This is Jenna, Louisiana. This is the LaSalle detention facility. Remember when we talked about first started talking about the whole immigration thing? And I told you what it was all about. I told you. This is Jenna. See this little red dot here, right here? I'm going to back out, give you an idea. This is Shreveport, Louisiana, which is up in northwest Louisiana. And over here is Vicksburg, Mississippi. That's about the right corner. The state borders are kind of hard to see. But you could. This is the northern border of Louisiana up here, Shreveport and Vicksburg. And way down here is New Orleans, and then Baton Rouge. And Jenna is right here, out in the middle of freaking nowhere. Mosquito, hot, muggy, nasty. Little bitty town. There's nothing there. Nothing. Except for the LaSalle detention facility. When we first started talking about Donnie Dumbass and his immigration policy and the mass deportation, I said, look, man, this has nothing to do with what they're telling you. This is nothing, of course, none of the crime statistics, nothing supported. I said, this is about one thing and one thing only. It is to throw meat to their base, red meat to their base, their bigoted base. That's what it's there for. And we already have a system in place to do these deportations. Why are they doing all of this extra stuff? And I said, it's really simple. Private prisons. The system that's in place, which could do all of this, we could have due process and we could do all of that it is illegal for, the federal corrections department, to write political checks. They can't do that. But if you run all this through private prisons and private companies like LaSalle, well, they can write checks all day long. And boy, business is booming for LaSalle. Yeah, that's what this is all about. Republicans getting those checks from the PACs, the travel, the 5-star chefs. They can really hear better. I'm sure they're not flying Republicans out to Jenna, Louisiana to hear about expanding these facilities. Now, they're probably flying them to Hawaii or, New York or someplace swanky so that they can hear the proposals better. They can always hear better in the tropics for some reason. That's what this is about. It's pure greed. Pure greed. But when you're talking about just regular old people, Kay Allen, thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the show. We need due process and no private prisons ever. Agree with you 100%. If you're going to take someone's freedom away, we need to be responsible for it. George Allen, here's what I got today. Well, thanks for always being here, George. I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for supporting the show. So, yeah, Republicans are getting a boatload of money from the private prison industry, and that's why people's lives are going to be destroyed. And here's the thing. I told you, most people are not like us. They're not like you. That's enough for you to vote. Your average person, though, it's not even enough for them to pay attention. A lot of America are bigots. They don't care if you deport these people. They don't care. In fact, they kind of like it. But I keep telling you, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. we're shooting ourselves in the foot because people like Kseniia Petrova, they're going to save your family members' lives. And now ICE is going to deport her. Now, how did we get here? How did this happen? How did we go from having someone that is writing the software that allows these electron microscopes to actually do their job, these cryo-electron microscopes to actually do their job? How do we get from there to ICE custody? Well, it has to do with this guy right here. This is Kseniia Petrova's boss. This is Dr. Leonid Pushkin. Ladies, she's single. Speaks Russian, speaks French, speaks several different languages, makes about 7 figures. Actually not a bad looking guy. That is Petrova's boss. And he's got a problem. He's got a problem on his hands. See, part of what they do, part of the research they do, I don't know if you know this, but frog eggs, frog embryos, are used extensively in research. Well, Dr. Pushkin there is having a problem with delivery. See, he's partnered up with the Curie Institute. This is the Curie Institute in Paris. So a lot of these projects, you just want the best people in the world working on them, and Harvard will partner up with other institutions. In one research project where they're using frog embryos, they're partnered up with the Curie Institute, and they've had a problem. The U.S. mail. The Curie Institute, which is a research hospital in Paris, it's massive. It's not just, that's just one image. It's several blocks. It is a massive institution. Of course, it's named after Maria Curie, the Polish French naturalized scientist, named after her, of course. But it is several blocks. It is just a massive research facility. But several of the times in which Dr. Pushkin has had these frog embryos mailed to him, they get damaged. They get lost. They just never show up. So he said, you know what? I've got an important set of frog embryos here that I really freaking need, and I can't risk it. I can't risk it. These cannot get lost. He said, Kseniia, you got a vacation coming up. How'd you like to go to Paris? How would you like to go to Paris? Yeah. Hell yeah. Sign Texas Paul up for that. I will go over there and pick up your little package of frog eggs. Hell yeah, I will. She said, just get them and bring them back. Well, she's not an expert in this stuff. She went over to the Curie Institute, showed her credentials. They said, here's your frog eggs. She put them in her check bag and came home and didn't declare them. Now, look, this is a problem, folks. It really is a problem. It really is. Okay. You can't have people just willy-nilly bring in, I mean, I would advise you go read about the fruit fly and what it did here. I mean, so I understand they seriously regulate this stuff. But you know what normally happens in a situation like this? It's a $500 fine. It is. She didn't declare them. They found them in her luggage. She said, "Oh yeah, I'm bringing them back. It's legitimate. They've mailed them back many, many, many times. It's not like she was, bringing in drugs or anything like that. No, it's not something that we were going to keep out of the country. We weren't. They would have never stopped these frog eggs, these research eggs, from coming in. She just didn't fill out the paperwork. She tried to save 10 minutes, is what she did. She screwed up. Normally, $500 fine. That's what that is. Nope. Not with this administration. See, this administration, they're desperate for these deportations. They are desperate to fill these private prisons and get their donations. They're desperate to throw red meat to their base. And it is blowing up in their faces because they're incompetent. They're incompetent morons. They really are. William G.H. says, bless all the Catholics in chat from a humanity-loving liberal. Yeah, it is a tough time to be Catholic right now with the Pope's viewing going on. I hope we get a Pope as good as the last one. I really do. He was a decent human being. He was a good human being. Nika T, thank you, Texas Paul, for all you do. Your knowledge is worth every penny. Hey, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I do. It's important to talk about this stuff because these policies are doing damage. They are doing damage. They are hurting us. So are we clear on this? She flew to Paris, had a vacation, picked up some frog embryos that we were not going to ban from the country. We weren't. We were going to allow these in. They come in all the time, but they get lost in shipping. They get damaged. They don't get handled properly. They're non-viable when they show up because they're not handled properly. They just really needed these particular eggs to show up enough that they would, hey, you want a Paris vacation? I mean, come on. Who wouldn't mule some legitimate research frog embryos for a trip to Paris? Who wouldn't, right? Right? No. ICE, not going to give her the $500 fine because they are so incompetent, so stupid. They have her locked away in Jenna, Louisiana, like she's some sort of hardcore criminal. And this is blowing up in their face. Robin, thanks for the support. I appreciate you. This is blowing up in their face. So, of course, you have to imagine people aren't happy about this. And the judge hearing the case has said, look, this is idiocy. This is stupid. This is beyond dumb. You have someone in prison over something that's normally handled much like a speeding ticket. Literally, the maximum fine is like $500. It would be a slap on the hand, a wag of the finger. Don't do that again. Fill out your paperwork. And the judge is like, this is moronic. You literally have this person in prison. You're suspending all of their research. And you would think everybody would be behind that, right? But no. This is embarrassing. This shows that this system is stupid. This shows that these people don't know what the fuck they're doing. And they're just desperate to try to deport anybody they can get their hands on and run anybody down to these facilities to fill those beds to get those private prison companies their money so they can get their donations. So, of course, a fine journalistic institution like Fox News would at least say, we should probably let the researcher go. Oh, no, no, no. Of course not. Of course not. All Fox does is carry water for the Trump administration. This is the headline they put out. Russian Harvard scientist Kseniia Petrova knowingly smuggled illicit items to the U.S. Why are they running that headline? For your dumbass uncle, for your drunk cousin. Because this is embarrassing, because it shows just how stupid this whole thing is. It shows that no one, folks, let me tell you something. They're, they, the FBI, they train at their own separate facility. Pretty famous, Quantico, Virginia. But most federal agents go to what they call FLETC. It's the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, FLETC, FLETC. And it's down in southern Georgia, near the coast. Border Patrol, yeah, they're low man on the totem pole down there. They really are. They do not get much respect from. They don't get much respect from the other agents. They really don't. They're the lowest paid. They're not the best of the best. They aren't. There's a distinct quality difference between, say, a Treasury agent with advanced degrees and what comes through for Border Patrol. Huge difference. These are the people. This agency is run amok. They're just making willy-nilly free decisions. And they've got a problem on their hands, folks. They've got a culture problem. They've got a bias problem. They've got a competence problem on their hands. And these people, subpar people, are given a free hand. They've just been given an order. Fill these prisons. Numbers is what we want. So they're doing horrific things. These are not the best of the best, folks. They're just not. This is why leadership matters. And I got to tell you, folks, in the best cases, the way these law enforcement departments or criminal investigating system, I mean, just the way they're handled, politics seeps into them. I'm talking in good agencies with good agents. You know, after 9/11, every boss in I don't care if you were, what department you were in, they went to their special agents and they said, I want to hear the word terrorism. I want to see it in your reports. And suddenly every gang, everything they investigated had some tie to terrorism. So that the bosses could go sit in their hearings in front of Congress and say, oh, look, we had X number of cases that were dealing with terrorism. We're doing our job. That's best case scenario. You've got this handed to the dregs of federal agents. And they've got shit leadership, a culture problem, and they aren't that damn bright. So now we've got an incredibly important researcher sitting in a Jenna, Louisiana private prison over something that should have been equivalent to a ticket. And it matters, folks. I mean, it matters. It makes a difference who our leaders are. And I've got to tell you, if anything anywhere tells you we cannot have Republicans in power. They are too corrupt, too broken. They don't represent the people or the people's interests at all. Have you heard anything out of Republicans? I have heard one Republican, guy by the name of Bacon, who's sounded off and said, look, this is hypocrisy. If Pete Hegseth was a Democrat, we'd be screaming for his head. Pete Hegseth has to go. One. I appreciate you. You know, I should have had a visual for that pulled up. I should have. Let me get you. Let me show you what I'm talking about. There you go. This is Don Bacon, Republican from Nebraska, is the first and only Republican to actually stand up and actually say something even remotely normal. And all he really says is exactly what I just told you. See, if this was a Democrat, we would be screaming for his head. We would be screaming for him to be perp walked out of the building. And that's it. That's all. I mean, that's all the Republicans have been able to muster in all of these egregious things that Republicans are doing. One freaking guy. Jeff Schuler, stupid people are more dangerous than malevolent ones. This administration has an abundance of both. Amen. Well said, sir. Well said. Because I got to tell you, you know, we talked about it in the last show. We've had Signal Gate 2.0. I told you, they're still using the personal phones. They are still using that idiotic free app Signal. And yeah, it came out. Here it is. In a group chat with Pete Hegseth's brother, his wife, and his personal attorney, Pete Hegseth was talking about flight schedules that our F-18s were on when they were doing their strikes in Yemen. Literally, when are they leaving the carrier? Old Pete Hegseth is like, and somebody's figuring out that maybe the Russians might be paying attention to that. It's a security problem. And people are finally starting to pay attention. They're finally starting to pay attention. It's finally starting to get to where you have one Republican who has stood up and said, hey, you know what? This guy needs to go. If he can't handle just basic OPSEC, if he's dumb enough to bring his wife into these chats, let alone just be having them in the first place, maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's a problem. I mean, it's good to see that somebody has finally chimed in because, you know, we've got things like this going on, folks. Yeah. Randy, one of the phones, Witkoff was in Russia at the time, running his entire chat through Russian servers. And folks, it's a free app. Signal will keep your grandma or your wife or your husband from knowing all the nefarious shit you're doing, but it will not keep a foreign intelligence agency out. It will not. The reason they use it is it deletes the messages. And they don't want to be held accountable for anything they do or say. Warren Benson, some of the J6 insurrectionists were terrorists, but very few of these immigrants have been found to have done anything that could be classified as terror. Well, we could argue about that because I actually watched what happened with my own eyes on January 6th, and that was a lot of freaking terror. But while you bring up the J6 people, a lot of them have gang tattoos. A lot of them were run through the system. None of them were stuck on a plane and shipped down to El Salvador. But you got a guy with a soccer club tattoo because they're bigots. Because they're bigots. And by the way, FYI, the latest on what they're doing there is all of these people, they are shipping them as fast as possible down here to Texas and Louisiana so that these cases have to go through the 4th district. Yeah. 1 second. Pardon me. I said the 4th district. 4th district is DC. This is they're shipping them down here so they've got to go through the 5th district. I mean, here I got a map of all the districts here so you can see what I'm talking about and I don't just casually say something. Yeah, they're moving them as fast as possible to force these cases. This is the 5th district, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas is down here. That's why they're shipping everybody as fast as they possibly can to these ICE facilities down here so that all of the lawyers, everything has to go through the rubber stamp 5th district. And because the judges in the 5th district, Donald Trump could shit in a box and try to give it to children as lunch, and these people, these judges in the 5th district would entertain arguments about the fact that it's nutritionally viable, and they're horrible. They are horrible. It's like an entire district of Samuel Alito's. So they're just flying everybody down here as fast as they possibly can. But why is it important, going back to Signalgate and Hegseth? Why is this important? Well, look, this is Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is an atoll out in the middle of the Pacific. To be more specific here, let's go to the map. Go to the map. This is Diego Garcia. It is a British territory. See this little pointer right here in the middle of the Indian Ocean? I said Pacific again. I don't know why I'm so tongue-tied today. But out here in the middle of the Indian Ocean, you can see, I mean, it's just a little bit of nothing out there. Just a little atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean. But if you take a look at where it's at, strategically close to Yemen and Iran. Just did something in regards to Iran. And more importantly, Yemen. And I'll explain that here in a minute. When we're sitting down and we're having negotiations with Iran over their nuclear program. So, of course, they wanted to do some saber rattling with Iran. But more importantly, they have decided their big distraction is Yemen. Anytime they get into trouble, they're going to bomb the shit out of Yemen. They think that this is going to save them. And they've done something really, really significant here. They moved our B-2s. B-2s are normally stationed in Missouri. They moved a half a dozen of our, we've got, 20 B-2s? Somebody fact check me on that one. 20 B-2 stealth bombers. They moved 6 of them out to Diego Garcia. We have a military base on that. little atoll. You can actually see the edge of the beach here. It's just a thin strip. So they ran a landing strip along the edge of it. And you can see our B-2s. We have a total of 6 of them there now, just sitting out there on the tarmac, within striking distance of Yemen. And we have 21 of them now, Uncle Russ. Uncle Russ, thanks for being here. Thank you for all the support, by the way. I got your package. Sorry, I didn't mean to be slurping into the mic there. Bad habits die hard. But yeah, we moved 6 of our multi-billion-dollar B-2 bombers. Yemen only helps the Saudis. Trump wants to use Iran to implement martial law. There are B-52s there too. Yeah, there are. Thank you for supporting the show. I appreciate you. But that's really a big freaking deal to station B-2s there. You don't do that willy-nilly. They're technological terrors. There are special teams specifically for doing nothing but servicing the B-2s. You didn't just move the planes there. You moved everything to care for these things and service these things there. When you stuck them on that little atoll out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, you had to move everything to support these planes there also. This is not cheap. This is a major commitment. Pamela Bradley, thank you for supporting the show. That's funny. The B in B-2 stands for billion. They are not cheap. They are expensive, and they are technological terrors. They really are. So why did they do it? Bomb Yemen, threaten Iran, because we're going into negotiations with Iran. And who doesn't love to go into negotiations with some threats, right? I mean, that's just the Trump regime MO. So yeah, that's what you can expect. I just want you to put a pin in that, and I want you to know, as the Trump regime stays in trouble, they're just going to keep bombing the shit out of Yemen, whether it makes sense or not, whether it's strategically important or not. It's going to be every time they get in trouble, they're going to launch the B-2s with big freaking flags hanging off the back of them, and they're, and have Fox News there to take pictures of them, and you're going to see, attacking the terrorists. And it's costing us a fortune for those optics. And it's not going to have to make sense. It's not going to have to make strategic sense. It's not going to have to be anything. No, this is just what they're going to do. Trump's in trouble. Some people are going to die. Trump wants red meat for his base. We're going to lock scientists up in freaking sweltering ass private prisons. It's just the way this administration works. And worse, they're so freaking desperate. This is what's happening with Iran. This is where we're at. The talks with Iran have moved from the let's all get together and shake hands and have the big press pictures and this, that, and the other. And the people that don't really know shit, I mean, because Marco Rubio really isn't an expert on this. We're talking about nuclear facilities. We're talking about, weapons production. What the hell does Marco Rubio know about any of that? So all the glad handing is over. And it didn't blow up. That's what this means. The fact that they've sat the experts down with each other. People that actually understand the actual science, what it takes, what these facilities are like, what it would mean. Since they've hit that level of negotiations, then folks, we know the give and take is happening. Because Iran has very public demands going into this. See, we've had sanctions on Iran forever. The Biden administration, carrot and stick. You have sanctions, they do something good, they get some carrot. One of the carrots is, and a lot of people don't understand this, so just kind of stick with me here. Y'all remember this? Y'all remember the Republicans just losing their damn minds, like Brian Mast here. Biden gave $16 billion to the Iranians. He just gave them $16 billion. And every dumbass person, your dumbass uncle, your drunk ass cousin, MAGA freaks all over the country, so we're giving our money to the Iranian because they don't understand shit about shit, which is never true. It was never true. Kay Allen, Trump in trouble equals more mission accomplished Bush 2 BS distractions. Amen, Kay. Amen. That is exactly the theme for the show and where I'm going with this. I mean, y'all remember it all, right? I mean, there was just think tanks and Fox News and everybody and their brother. All they could talk about was Iran got billions of dollars. Biden gave Iran, it was their money. He didn't give them anything. But if you listen to Fox News, it sounded like there were pallets of cash that they shrink wrapped, put them on the back of the plane, and flew it to Iran. And by the way, it was $16 billion that we're talking about. But that was Iran's money. We actually were in the process of losing in the world court because we were just snatching up their money. And we were losing. So what did this really mean? See, Iran's got contracts with Iraq. But you're like, Paul, wait a minute. They were at war. Oh, yeah. What did I tell you? War is young men dying and old men making money. Iran sells electricity to Iraq. Iran has nuclear facilities and different power plants, in which case they pump electricity into Iraq. Iraq pays, the citizens pay for the electricity. The companies get their money and they get their share, but all of it that was supposed to go back to Iraq or Iran for the actual power itself to pay for it, we kept saying, nope, you can't have that. And we left it in escrow in Iraq. We didn't have it. Iraq had it. And because we held so much sway in Iraq, they were good with holding on to Iran's money. Iran sold them the electricity, then Iraq never paid them for it. But they did collect the money from their people and from us and from every business and everybody else. They took the money, but they just never paid for the electricity. Joe Biden, when Iran would do something right, would go to the Iraqis and say, give them their money. As long as we can track it and Iran agrees to only use it for humanitarian purposes, build schools, hospitals, pay for roads, water treatment, things like that, they can have their money. But if you listen to Fox News, we just rain in pallets of cash on Iran that we're dropping the cash off at their missile facilities directly so that they can, build missiles, which was never true. None of it was ever true. So why am I railing about that? The fact that you just saw that headline, that this has reached the expert level of negotiations means Trump folded. Trump bent over and grabbed his ankles for a round. Trump is so desperate for a win. He's so desperate to go out there and say, oh, look, I did something. He gave Iran what they were asking for. Because that is the only reason Iran will make a deal on their nuclear facilities. The deal hasn't changed. Iran's deal has always been security guarantees and you repeal the economic sanctions. And those economic sanctions, I want you to keep in mind, the fit that Republicans threw about $16 billion worth of Iran's own electricity money. When they peel off these sanctions, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in oil revenue. Hundreds of billions of dollars in oil revenue Iran is going to get. And the fact that they are at the point where they have the folks that actually understand the nuclear facilities sitting down and glad handing and talking, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. That is a good thing that we got here. But yeah, just taking a moment and savor the hypocrisy. Joe Biden frees up $16 billion worth of Iran's own money held in Iraq, and Republicans acted as though the world was ending and Joe Biden himself was building missiles for terrorists. But Donald Trump, who is in desperate shape politically, is bending over and giving. Remember, Donald Trump is trying to flood the world with oil for his Saudis buddies that run their golf league through his golf courses here. Live. They are flooding the market with oil to kill domestic producers here, which is going to mean cheap oil for about a year here. But we've already talked about it. Oil starts hitting 50 a barrel, which we're already there. Layoffs in the domestic oil industry starts happening. It hits 40, the bankruptcies come, and then the Saudis and the Russians and the Iranians got us, man. They got us because you can't just start that production up. It's not like just going and opening up a spigot. It isn't. You're talking about well rehabilitation. You're talking about maintenance. You're talking about shipping. You're talking about it takes years to get that production back up. And our floor is higher than the Saudis because the Saudis use Chinese, basically indentured servants in their oil industry. Their floor is much lower than ours, their price floor. So yeah, Trump is working with the Iranians, and the next thing you're going to hear is Iranian oil is flooding the market. And that will be it for our domestic oil production. That will be it. That will be the final nail in the coffin. And it's happening, folks, because you do not have the nuclear experts, the ones that understand what it would take to actually close down and enrich. You have to understand how an enrichment facility works and what is in it, what it takes to make deuterium, what it takes to make, all of the things that they need. Not to mention the material itself has to all be dealt with. When those people are sitting down and negotiating, yeah, Iran has already gotten its guarantees. They've already gotten what they wanted. And Trump is so desperate. And he's desperate because of this. He appointed idiots. It's an incompetent administration. It's an incompetent regime. And people have had enough. I bet the Dow is exploding today. I know futures were up over 1,000 points. But the people that funded Trump to get him in office are done with this shit. And you know that heads are going to roll because Trump has folded like a cheap suit. The reason this is happening is Trump came out yesterday and publicly humiliated himself. He backed off the tariffs in China. He's backed off the tariffs in China. He lost the trade war with China that he didn't need to start in the first place. And of course, Wall Street bought it. But they are sick of the chaos. This was the bridge too far for them. This is Jerome Powell. Trump hates Jerome Powell. Hates him. Because Trump can't stand smart people. He really can't. And he desperately wants to bully Jerome Powell. And Jerome Powell is if you don't know, he's the chairman of the Federal Reserve. This is the guy that sets our interest rates. And Trump is ass deep in debt. Interest rates mean a lot to him personally. And this is all Trump is about is what this presidency isn't about America or anything like that. It's about what Trump can grift. And he hates Jerome Powell. He has been trying to bully Jerome Powell into lowering interest rates. And Jerome Powell said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to make economic policy at the whims of this moron who bankrupted casinos. Thank you, Don. I appreciate you for supporting the show. He did very publicly said, I'm not doing it. I'm not setting policy that way. And Wall Street liked that. They really did. Well, Trump folded on Jerome Powell also. Publicly yesterday, after saying he's going to fire him, he's going to replace him, he's an idiot, he's got to go, this, that, and the other, publicly humbled himself and came out and said, "Oh no, I'm not going to replace Jerome Powell. No, that's never going to happen. No." But the corporate media is not covering any of this like this, which is the truth. He lost the trade war with China. He folded on the tariffs with China. He folded on Jerome Powell. But the weakling, grifter, tabloid piece of shit news, corporate news, are not telling you any of this. They're not. There are no headlines out there. Trump folds. Yeah, well, there you go. Maddow did. Yeah. Midas touch. Midas did. If I love the guys over at Midas. But what did the corporate media do? CBS. They fired Bill Owens. If you've been watching 60 Minutes for as long as I have, you were watching Bill Owens work. I think it's like 37 years he's been running CBS News. He's the executive producer over there. Glenn, thanks for supporting the show. He's out. They said, quit or be fired. And he said, I'm out. Because he said, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. And I've got to tell you, kudos. He was well liked because after he was out the door and after it was no benefit to anyone, the two anchors on CBS Evening News, they said this. This did nothing but endanger their careers, but they felt strongly enough to say this.
Finally, tonight, a story that is personal for us here at CBS News. Our friend and colleague, Bill Owens, announced today he is stepping down as executive producer of 60 Minutes.
In its more than half a century on the air, 60 Minutes has prided itself on independent reporting. But Owens said he was no longer allowed to run the broadcast as it had been run and to make independent decisions.
60 Minutes is at the center of a lawsuit filed by then-candidate Donald Trump, who claims the broadcast has not been fair to him. CBS's parent, Paramount Global, is trying to resolve the suit as it works to complete a merger that needs government approval.
Owens has stood firm, insisting that 60 Minutes did nothing wrong and that he would not apologize.
Bill Owens was also the supervising producer of this broadcast. He's a man of great integrity. We will always be grateful to him for his wisdom, his guidance, and above all, his friendship.
And we cannot thank him enough. That is the CBS.
They flat out said it. We got a merger, a corporate merger happening. Our parent company, Paramount, has a merger that's happening that's going to require government approval. And they've told us they're not going to give it to us if we don't, suck up. And Bill Owens won't suck up. So he's got to go. That's the state of corporate news, folks. Ron, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. That's why at a time in my life when I thought I was going to be fishing and woodworking, I am doing this full time. Because we have to. We have to. Because you see what's going on. That's CBS News, folks. That's CBS News. Bending the knee. That's why you haven't heard today. Trump folded. Trump lost the trade war with China. Trump humiliated himself. He humbled himself publicly to the broligarchs who said, enough of this shit. You have cost us trillions. Enough. They yanked his leash and he bent the knee. And he bent the knee because he was starting to get shots like this across the bow. That news coverage was starting to go south. Those same broligarchs that own these news organizations were sending him a few warning shots. The same ones that were bending over for him, the same ones that were more than happy to placate little Donnie. We're starting to say, imagine what your presidency is going to look like if we tell them that while you're causing all this market chaos and costing us trillions of dollars and causing the gold markets to spike, that you are selling gold certificates on your private website. See, that's something that even the dumbass MAGA folks can understand. That's where we're at, folks. The broligarchs are just having their freaking way. And we've got an incompetent president that just lets people do whatever the hell they want. And appointed people that weren't competent because competent people wouldn't do the kind of shit that he wanted. Competent people don't just do mass deportations. So he had to appoint incompetent people. And it's all coming apart at the seams. And the oligarchs, they're not stupid. They're looking at these election results. They're looking at what you're doing. They're looking at the fact that, yeah, you're really closing your wallet. The economy's really going south. This is really costing us trillions of dollars. Maybe this shit we were doing wasn't a really good idea. And they're looking at Democrats winning the midterms significantly. So they're going to start trying to shove this shit back in the horse. And a perfect example of this is this. Give me a second. I got to pull it up. Cecile Kazemi, thanks for always being here. Finally here. New report just now, even lower confidence in the economy. No duh. Exactly. They have now put the forecast out and said the end of this year and the next year is going to be a recession. But yeah, Tesla reported its earnings yesterday. Year over year, they're down 71%. The oligarchs never thought that you would actually do something. And of course, Musk is trying to save face, saying, "Oh, I'm still going to be part of Doge, but I just can't. I got to devote more time to my company." Like that's going to help. Like we're going to forget your freaking Nazi salute. Like your brand isn't already freaking toast. Folks, if it wasn't for government welfare, the free credits that we give Tesla every year, you and I pay for, that he turns around and sells like $500 million worth of carbon credits. Tesla lost money this quarter if you take those away. Yeah. Oligarchs understand that. They understand that you've had enough of this shit. And they're wising up to the fact that you're going to make them pay at the polls. And now, like Musk is out there thinking that, well, I'm just going to put the shit back in the horse. I'll quit being part of Doge and you won't see my face anymore. And I won't look like a dumbass standing in the Oval Office with my t-shirt on, with my kid telling the president of the United States to shut up. I'll stop doing that and everything will be fine. They'll buy my cars again, right? No. Nobody's going to forget this shit. Nobody's going to forget this shit. And exactly. I'm sure the stock is rebounding because that is just how clueless the oligarchs are. They have no idea that when they shot their shot this time, when they forced Donald Trump on us, when they bought out the media, when they sat there and literally forced Donald Trump on us, that we would see it and understand and make them pay. And they really are dumb enough. They really are dumb enough. They're buying Tesla stock today. That's how dumb they are. How out of touch with you and me they really are. They think that there's actually something Elon Musk could do. He could sell, he could resign, and it would not save that company. He could. He could resign, and it would not save that company because everyone would know that he's still getting rich off of it. It's poisoned. It's dead. It's going to be nothing but carbon credits. That's it. And when the Democrats take power, that's over. Because there's no way to justify a company that's failing being propped up by nothing but corporate, by government welfare. Ted Brown, private prison corporation concentration camp equal concentration camps. Amen, brother. Question is Eric Prince playing Heydrich or Himmler in this shit show? 25 billion guys for her. Yeah, I hear you. I hear exactly what you're saying. This is sick. Jeanette Dahl, part of our international audience. Thank you for always being here. The whole world has seen that he gave in. I am waiting to see what happens in relation to the EU. Yeah, he's folded 100%. Trump has folded like a cheap suit. Thanks for supporting the show, Pet Friendly. Appreciate it. New donor. Glad to see you're here. Vincent Day, thanks for sharing your knowledge. Hey, glad to be here. I'm glad to be here. It's all about our community. It's about getting information out. It's about getting around the corporate media that has been manhandling the American people for too damn long. There's nothing Republicans can do to save their brand. They really thought they were going to pull this 2025 project off. They really did. They thought that we were going to react violently and give them the excuse to declare martial law. They didn't understand us at all. And they didn't understand that when you didn't give that little dumbass down at Texas Roadhouse that sits there and greets you at the door who voted for Trump because she didn't want taxes on her tips, didn't get her tax break, that little bitch is vindictive. She will not forget that. The Republican brand is toast. All you have left, and again, I warn people about this all the time. It is never 100%. It will never die 100%. You will have people. You had people in my dad's generation that were still talking about how we screwed Nixon and how great Nixon was. I mean, you'll never get them all to go away. But the overwhelming majority of the country look at Republicans now and they're like, oh, hell no. They want to screw our Social Security. They want to screw our Medicare, our Medicaid. Look what they're doing to our government. They're trying to backdoor it by firing all the employees. People get this. They do. This is a whole new world. Andrew Ordonez, good news today. Ron DeSantis and his wife are expected to exit politics by year's end for embezzling $10 million, as reported by the Miami Herald. Amen, brother. Amen. I love the fact that you folks are so on top of these things. I love that. This is what he's talking about. I'll pull it up. This was going to be part of Friday's show because I like to, folks, I don't want to be first. I never care about being first. What I care about is getting the background information, the information that you know. You've got plenty of news people out there talking about Kseniia Petrova and there's a scientist that said, they don't tell you what she got arrested for. They don't tell you just how stupid it is. They don't give you the full picture. That's what I want to do here. When this broke, this really is looking like it's going to be huge. One second. I can't find the Miami Herald article. You're going to have to wait till Friday. But it looks like the Miami Herald is on a story about DeSantis. See, what he's been trying to do is run his wife Casey for governor, and nobody was buying it. Now it looks like there's some financial shenanigans that have gone on that are just going to dirt in her chances. Well, actually, they were dirting in already because people were like, no, we know exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to make your wife governor so that you can run everything. No, we're not doing that. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a big story. Marlon Timmons, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Well, look, we got a few minutes left. We can do a roundtable here. Is there anything that y'all want to talk about in particular? We got time for a roundtable. That's what I have for you today, folks. Pay attention to this Iran situation because you're going to see the corporate media catch on here in a couple weeks, and they will talk about, and because it's unflattering to the Republicans, it is devastating to Republicans. They're going to bury the stories, but you watch. We'll point it out exactly how Iran has pulled hundreds of billions of dollars out of this hat. Adam Schmidt's Nazi salutes are bad for business. Who knew? Amen, brother. Amen. One second. One second. Hang in there. Here we go. Somebody just linked to me the Miami Herald story. But yeah, remember we did the shows on that whole Florida Hope and the way they were funneling through the money through this program. Yeah, this whole state charity, that hybrid private state charity disaster mess. But yeah, turns out that they were mugging Medicaid and shifting the money through. I'm waiting to see more about that because if you just let these stories kind of blossom a little bit, you'll get really good journalists. And folks, I can't rail on this enough. I am not a journalist. I'm a commentator. Journalists are people that are very skilled, very qualified, very, very special people that go out and they will do the digging on this. And right now, there are people looking at this, and they're gonna go through the finances on this with a fine-tooth comb, and we're gonna get every dirty, nasty little detail, because I guarantee you, everything that comes out at first is never as bad as it gets. It always gets worse. Amen. Judith, ACLU filed hundreds of lawsuits here. What she's talking about here. Let me pull it up for you. One second. Stay with me. Let me find the best article. Forgive me. I'm just going through. There's several different articles on it. Doesn't look like any of the major outlets have lumped them together yet. The New York Times pretends to have, but it's not very good. It's not very good. But there are tons of local articles here. that are talking about the both motions and new lawsuits the ACLU filed yesterday. They just pumped a bunch of them out, most of them on voting, some of them on immigration. I'm telling you, the ACLU, some of the lawsuits they file will set your hair on fire. You're like, why? Why are they? Why would you defend this? But man, they're just keeping our democracy alive. They are. Their willingness to do the work and take the unsavory cases, just for the point of, it's the American Civil Liberties Union. It's in the title. The fact that they're willing to hold their nose and take some of these cases are the reason that our civil liberties are still standing today. Kay Allen here says, so far the courts are holding firm. Other than Alito and Thomas, they had better. We are watching. Yeah. So far, that has been the one light point. The point of light that has really given me hope is that, so far, my prediction that the Supreme Court and judge, other than that damn Fifth Circuit, which is just trash. Other than that, the courts have been pretty much, unwilling to entertain this bullshit about, you can deport Americans, or you can just deport people without due process, or you can ignore the Constitution. And I actually love this, because one of the talking points that every once in a while, the right-wing spin machine just screws the pooch. And one of the ways they do it, when they do it, is they get their people embarrassed. And one of the talking points that they've been putting out is that the Constitution only applies to citizens. Immigrants have no right to due process. And man, I tell you what, everybody was quoting the Fifth Amendment, and there's just all the different places in the Constitution that points out, no, it applies to people. People. If you're not a citizen of the United States, and you commit a crime and they arrest you, you still have the right to remain silent. You still have all the rights we afford, because those rights are afforded to people. And nowhere in the Constitution does it say citizens. That's a load of crap. Lady Di 245. Lady Di 1245. Thank you for being here to support the show. 12 million went to his wife's charity, and 8.5 million was funneled through two other accounts that went to DeSantis' own political PAC. I'm telling you, keep an eye on this one. This one's got legs. We'll talk about it more on Friday, but I want to let the journalist really go at it and really, trust me, there's more out there. We're going to get some good detail. Uh-oh. Looks like we got some more bad news today. The Dow was taking off like a rocket. It was up 1,000 points. And it seems to be plummeting again. I wonder what Donnie Dumbass did. Let me see. Let me see if there's something dumb he did. All right. I'm not seeing anything that happened while we were in the show. I guess people have just are able to, because this is what me and Mrs. Texas Paul were talking about this yesterday. We're people. We've got to figure out where to put our money, where to invest. We're people. So we have these conversations. And we were talking yesterday, where the hell do we put our money? I mean, it's like they poured gasoline on every institution and lit it on fire. I mean, going forward, what do we do? Because we're in for a recession. We're really in for a recession. Everything is slowing. Everything is slowing. The economy is, and here's the thing. I think that what they're figuring out why the market isn't still taking off, because look, this is, let me just pull it up for more than just today. You know, why isn't the market recovering? Why isn't the market recovering? All right. You can see it's starting to tumble again today. I mean, it came out up almost 1,000 points. But if you look at the 5 days, it's still down 619 points over the last 5 days. The last month, it's still down 3,000 points. The last 6 months, you're talking about since Trump took office, it's still down 3,000 points. Why isn't it recovering? Instability, stupidity. You've got Trump selling gold, making money off all of this chaos. And that's one thing markets hate the most is chaos. And it's seriously affecting our economy. These tariffs cost money. And you know what? Tommy, I get that. A lot of it is emotions. A lot of it is the feeling of instability. That's a real thing. But you know what is also a real thing? Prices. Prices matter. And everybody's figured out, look, we want those interest rates to come down. Our economy is basically at the point where it requires those ultra low interest rates that are not normal. But they can't because these tariffs are spiking prices. You know, just a month ago, egg prices hit a record, yet egg producers are making massive profits. This has nothing to do with bird flu anymore. This is the new normal, and people are figuring this out. Everybody's jacking their prices, and nobody's bringing those prices back down. The only thing getting cheaper is energy. And what does it matter if nobody's going anywhere? Take a look at gold. Gold's slowing down. Gold's cooling off. It's down 117 points today. It spiked like crazy because of all the instability, but it is coming down slowly. Last month, it's up for the month. Trending up for the last 6 months. But it's taken a little bit of a hit today. But I think that has to do more with anything. Again, you can't really tell anything long-term trends by looking at one day. I think it may have to do with Trump folded like a cheap suit. So everybody was worried that, oh, wait, the market takes off, people will dump their gold. And, so it was just a one-day reaction. Somebody asked about silver. Silver's climbing today. One of the things I think is baked into the cake with gold on top of that you've got to be mindful of is that if the economy takes off, gold is used more than silver is in industrial manufacturing. Circuitry, everything requires gold. It has a lot of industrial uses. So there's always that backstop there with gold. But silver's up today. And don't ask me why. I'm not your financial advisor. Yeah, silver's still trending. Over the last 6 months, it's slightly down, but pretty flat. But today it's taken off. What are we talking about? This is because the markets flood into minerals. They do. You always hear about that. Gold spikes when the market takes it because it's safe haven. People always need gold. That's a good question. What copper is doing, because copper is a good indicator of what's going on with the economy. Because again, so many industrial uses, you could actually get a good idea of what they think the economy is doing, because people won't buy copper futures because they're not expecting there to be demand. Copper's tanking today. It's up 0.27 for the last month. It's down a quarter. Yeah, if it's not on a sustained rally for the last 6 months, it's up 10%. But it's, again, look at all the volatility. Wall Street hates that more than anything. It's what happens when you put imbeciles in charge. So let's see if there's anything else we got going on in the world that's happened while the show's going on. You got JD Vance saying more stupid shit about Ukraine, echoing what Marco Rubio said about they're not going to be blamed for the fact that there's no peace deal, even though they said, 24 hours Trump would have a beautiful deal. They're going to try to slink away from that and blame somebody else. Marcia, thanks for supporting the show. I appreciate it. So JD Vance is out there. So it sounds like we're walking away from the Ukraine peace deal, is what it sounded like. Because, you had Marco Rubio talking about it. Now you've got JD Vance out talking about it today. But this is a big one that's going to hurt people. This one's going to have a lot of political impact. Everybody likes to call us socialists, damn socialists. But they really like the idea of those college loans going away. They really like that idea. If they would stop calling it free education and come up with a better term for that, because MAGA morons and people on the right are just kind of ignorant. If you call anything free, it's negative. If they come up with another name for it, but they really like it. They really do like it themselves. But no, this is going to have a lot of political hang time. If you don't know what's going on, the Trump regime has said that they're going to start, for the longest time, the government backed off of going after people that had defaulted on their government loans, their school loans. But no, the Trump regime has said they're going to go hot and heavy. Anybody that's defaulted on their school loans, they're going to go after them civilly as hard as possible. And I'm sure they're going to throw in a criminal component, because these people can't do anything without trying to put somebody in one of the private prisons. But yeah, folks aren't going to really dig that very much. As much as people, again, sit there and say, well, you Democrats are socialists and all you want is free stuff. They really like when they don't have to pay for their kids' college. Pablo 01, keep doing what you're doing. We need you. Truth will set us free. Amen. Amen. Well said. Yes, the whole college. John, thanks for being here, friend. Young folks are very in tune with what they're doing as far as tuition, loans, all of it. All of it. That's a good one, Courtney. It needs a little refining, but that's a good one. Instead of calling it tuition, call it a tax. Call it a tuition tax to go to college. That's a good one. I like that. I'm going to talk to some people about that. Because it is. I mean, these universities, they're government run. It is a tax. Hell, that's a good one. We're not giving away free college. We're repealing the tuition tax. Amen. Good one. I love you people. Y'all are the best. Amen. Well, look, folks, that's what I've got for you today. I hope it's been useful. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that I've been clear and you understand. Folks, the corporate media is not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They've been bought and paid for by the oligarchs. They're going to sell tabloid shit. They're going to shill for the Republican Party. And it's going to take people like me. It's going to take people like Mighty Stux. It's going to take people like Brando. That are going to look at these things and they're going to tell you, let me give you an idea. Silly Bee Boo, thanks for always being here. I really appreciate you always being here. VA employees were sent an email to encourage tattling on their coworkers who see any anti-Christian. That is another one that just sent me through the roof. I actually didn't include that in today's show because I want to see more about that. This is one of those where I'm saying give them rope and let them hang themselves, because that, again, does not fly well. What she's talking about is they're trying to set up in each government organization a Christian board, a Christian committee, to make sure that nobody's making Christians feel uncomfortable, that you're not seeing any anti-Christian sentiment. Again, this was part of the deal. Remember, churches didn't have a problem with abortion or birth control until the Republicans made a deal with the devil. You had like Ralph Reed out there marrying the Republican Party and the churches together. Well, part of the deal was that they put the churches in the government. That was part of it. And this is one of the ways they're doing it, is they're going to set up these Christian committees to make sure that nothing what they do has an anti-Christian bias. They're going to put the churches in every aspect of the government. Not going to work, not going to fly. There are laws against this, but they're doing it. They're doing it here today. Well, look, I got to get out of here, folks. I love you, folks. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being wonderful. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for supporting the show. I cannot do it without you. As you saw from the beginning, the shitty internet that we had when we first logged in, that went normally is my first go-to, was crap today. Had to go back to one of the backups. Y'all pay for those. I don't know about you. I don't know how many ISPs y'all have at your house. We have 3 here just to make sure that I can do this show. Y'all pay for that, and I'm grateful. I am truly grateful. When I say I could not do it without you, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So enjoy some Texas City at night.